Three men were fishing in a pond one evening, enjoying the sounds of nature and watching the sunset. They began discussing why they enjoyed the sport of fishing. The man, a pastor of 40 years, said, "I enjoy fishing because I can relax." The second man, a chef of 30 years, said, "I enjoy fishing because it feels like a mini vacation." The third man, a stressed first-year teacher, sat uncomfortably in his folding chair at the edge of the water. He contemplated why he was here instead of home preparing a lesson plan. The new teacher shrugged his shoulders and said, "I just came fishing because you said we would hang out and grab dinner. So what is for dinner?" The pastor looked at the chef and said, "Break open a first aid kit." The chef opened a cooler next to him and pushed around the ice until he found what he was looking for. He produced a cold craft beer by Sun King, a cream ale. He handed it to the teacher and said, "Drink up, son. We have a lot to teach you." Pointing to the cooler, the teacher asked, "Why did you call the cooler a first aid kit?" "Patience, Padawan, patience." The teacher learned more and more from the pastor and from the chef with each Friday night's fishing trip. After weeks of outings at the fishing hole, the teacher began to formulate life lessons. Let's listen in to what he learned. First, he learned to be a student of self-care. The pastor shared a story early in his career about missing a high-profile opportunity to serve his church. He explained that after months of preparing for the annual church district banquet, he lost his voice. The weeks leading up to the event were exciting for the young associate pastor, and he wanted to make a good impression on his pastor and the congregation. The energized clergyman was present at almost every event. He worked with the youth ushers, the deacon board, Bible study, and more. He was a member of both the men's and community choir. He loved the church and wanted to care for others the way he had been cared for by the elders of the church growing up. He woke up one morning with a cough. He tried to shake the cough without success. Later that day, he received a call from the church secretary. The voicemail stated that the banquet moderator was in an accident and had a concussion and would be under doctor's care for 24 hours. The young pastor prayed for the moderator and called the hospital to check on the status. The phone rang and a nurse answered. He began to ask a question, but he started to cough uncontrollably. He hung up and later found out that he had the flu and laryngitis. The doctor recommended rest for his body and his voice and medication for at least 48 hours. The young pastor quickly came to the realization that weeks and weeks of caring for others and not once for himself wore his immune system down. He complied with the doctor's orders, and he missed the opportunity to moderate the district banquet that year. The young pastor learned that his pastor strategically scheduled clergy devotional time days before large events to offset the potential for burnout. A crisis will always arise, and the best way to be your best is to know your seasons. High-stress seasons like the district banquet and holidays require a retreat or devotional period for the clergy to recharge. The head pastor explained that associate pastors help balance the workload. The young pastor realized that in his excitement to see the banquet as a success, he never saw himself transitioning through the weeks leading up to the event. From then on, he watched the pastor for more than his leadership, but his self-care. What did the young pastor learn that we can all apply to our work as caregivers? There are 3 things the teacher can learn. First, be a student of self-care. Second, grow from what you learn about self-care. Aim for longevity with your self-care. The story you just heard, the pastor that inspired that story was my father-in-law, Reverend David L. Johnson Sr., and he was an active pastor for over 40 years in Indianapolis, Indiana. And over the years, I've heard he and my husband and my husband's brothers talk about some of the things that they did with their father, and one of those things was fishing. And that was a way to unwind, but also to connect with his sons. And I think my father-in-law stands as a great example of how you provide care for others, but you also practice self-care. So I hope you enjoyed the story. Thank you so much to my father-in-law for just embodying the great inspiration for that story, and for my husband and his brothers for sharing their experiences with their father, sitting next to the banks of the Fishing Hole.